Well
Absolutely.
lived.
No word on when it'll begin
Hmm.
dealerships.
Absolutely.
It'll build the
So,
truck in a
okay. So,
factory
well,
in the
we got a
Detroit
lot to
area.
talk about today, but I'm
I'm
so
Rita
glad
Foley, AP
that you are
News.
going to give us the good
This is
news.
820 AM,
Amen.
WCPT Willow Springs, and streaming
Okay.
worldwide at
We'll be talking about blacks and gun
WCPT820.com.
ownership
We are
today.
Chicago's
Well,
progressive talk, where facts
Mm.
matter.
it's on the
Now, your
rise. We have the
WCPT
fastest
820
growing
Chicago traffic
demographic group
update.
of gun owners.
Still dealing with some
Black
problems
people
on the
do.
Dan Ryan
So
outbound
it's
at 63rd. The exit
and
ramp remains
so I
closed
wanted to
after an
bring that
earlier crash.
out.
Also, the Stevenson
Just
heading
getting,
inbound at
me
the Dan Ryan. That ramp
start up
starting to become a little
my
sluggish as
Monday
you go from
night
the inbound
again, but I'm not
Stevenson
going to do it
to
every
the
Monday.
inbound Dan Ryan.
So
Also
it's
on the
just
tri-state,
really
northbound
taxing.
Eisenhower.
But
That's a little slow from the northbound
so I can bring up
tri-state
some other
to
issues that
the
that you can
outbound
talk about
Eisenhower.
in
80
longer
westbound between
form, but
I-39
only
and
for
Route
45
251
minutes
has
because you
some road
don't
construction in
want to
place.
wear
And
people
also,
out.
again, on the tri-state, if you're heading
People.
northbound at the
Mhm.
Eisenhower, that ramp a little sluggish
It's
as you
just it
go
can be a
from
lot.
the
Oh, let me
northbound
say hello to
tri-state
everybody. Hey,
to the
Linear
outbound
Bob, how
I.
you doing
Also
from
on
San Jose?
I-57 heading
And Barbara
outbound near
Jean,
the Southside Channel
hey!
to
I can't believe
Hudson.
it's Wednesday.
Road
Okay,
construction
it's
as the
Wednesday.
two
All
left
right.
lanes block.
All
That's
right, hump
traffic.
day. I
I'm
heard
Paul
that.
Bode's
Daryl
News.
and Samantha and Raphael
Tom
and Shirley
Hartman.
from Philadelphia.
Republicans have been
Let me
trying
tell
to
you what we're
cancel
going
the
to be doing
minimum
today.
wage
We're going
ever
to be
since it
talking
was
about
enacted in
blacks
the
and gun ownership,
1930s.
the
They've
fastest growing
successfully
demographic
canceled
group.
any
Can you bring that
increases in
down,
it for
Paul,
over a
please?
decade. Republicans have gone out of their way to try and keep
I'm sorry.
Can you bring that down?
They've been on a Jeremiah ad.
Okay, perfect. Perfect. Thank you. The fastest growing gun ownership group in the country is are black people, black men and women, which is interesting. Part of it is a response to this tense racial climate and the economy, quite frankly. And those tend to go hand in hand. So there's that. And then we're going to be, of course, getting the latest and the greatest on the, if you will, on the Derek
One
Chauvin
minute away.
trial. Something that many of us are having to watch. I have to watch it because, of course, this show is also syndicated in Minneapolis, St. Paul. But people are riveted by this, and we're watching it all over the country and all over the world. What a statement it is. Um, more and more Americans, as we go to these places, and Vicki, you know this, just coming out of the civil rights movement, we can be so self-righteous,
Yes.
and people look at us and go,
Mm.
"Are you serious? Do you know how you treat? Do you know how you treat black people?" I mean, and that
Mhm.
is what happens. That is how America gets kicked in the teeth in various
15.
places. So it's something to think about, everybody.
10.
This is WCPT 820, where facts
5.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
Hey, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. I'm Santita Jackson. It's hump day. It's Wednesday. Wow. Beautiful, beautiful day here in Chicago. WCPT 820. It's going to be going to have a high of 75 degrees, isolated thunderstorms, and, of course, my family to the north in Minneapolis, St. Paul, as we watch the Derek Chauvin trial. You're going to have a high of 67 degrees and thunderstorms. It's going to be beautiful. It feels like spring is just really here. Got to talk about the Derek Chauvin trial. Where is it going? I thought it was really fascinating to see Maurice Hall, the friend of George Floyd, someone who was reputed to have been someone who George Floyd was able to buy drugs from. He doesn't want to testify, and he's in jail right now. So that's interesting. This is a very interesting dynamic, and I think we need to pay attention to that. And of course, we're going to have our all-star panel talking about that at the top of the next hour. At the bottom of this hour, joining Dr. Deborah Holden will be Dr. Marilyn Corder. She used to be the chief of staff at a major hospital in Washington, D.C. Of course, she's a Howardite. Thank you very much. And she teaches at the Howard University Medical School at pediatrics. She's a professor of pediatrics at the Howard Medical School. But she is someone who is very involved in public health as well, as many of these conscious and conscientious Black doctors are. And so she's going to talk to us about a lot of our reservations about vaccines and what we can do to increase our healthfulness overall, no matter what. no matter what. So everybody, I want you to go to the Santita Jackson and Friends page on Facebook. Meet my morning stars over there. Hey Keith, how you doing? And Lorraine, Lorraine, I got to talk to you because my father skipped out on our appointment yesterday. Yes, but he was meeting Vice President Harris. So what can I tell you? But because she was here, of course, trying to get people to get vaccinated. Francis and Kenneth, and of course Shirley from Philadelphia, and Barbara Jean and Linear Bob out there in San Jose, California, and Daryl. Oh boy, Samantha. So many of you out there. Thank you so much. Thank you, Dawn and Mark and Jewel, and so many of you for joining us out there. Everybody, like and share, and please do me this favor: go over to my YouTube page, The Santita Jackson Show, and like and subscribe. I'm trying to build up those numbers, and I can only do that with your help. I need you. I need you. I need you. I want to send a shout out to my friends in New York, Jenna Flanagan, and the Metro Focus uh, television show on PBS. I was on there last night. I'll be sharing that link. You can go to my Twitter feed at Santita J and see our appearance there yesterday. We were talking about this trial, the Chauvin trial, as well as anti-Asian violence. So, got a lot to talk about today, and so let's get right to it. Let's get to some of these headlines before we get the good news from Reverend Vicki Johnson, everybody. The Dow closed down 96 points yesterday. The NASDAQ closed down 7 points, and the S&P 500 closed down 3 points. Not a lot of activity there. Well, the U.S. economy, though, is growing at the fastest pace since 1984, according to this CNN report, and will likely surpass its pre-pandemic size. Nearly half of all U.S. adults will have a first COVID-19 dose by the weekend, and the country will have enough vaccines for all Americans by the end of next month. However, there are several reasons to temper any optimism, according to this CNN report, that brings. For one, some willing adults may be willing to wait until the end of the year to get vaccinated because of slow rollouts in some states. Hospitals are also noticing younger and younger patients, and experts say youth sports and extracurricular activities may be contributing to the rise in coronavirus. And guess what, everybody? At the same time, Americans' worry about catching coronavirus has dropped to a record low. 35% of Americans are worried about catching COVID-19, down from 49%. That's a really low number, even as the numbers rise in infections. 77% say the COVID-19 situation in the U.S. is improving, up from 60%. And 64% report at least a fair amount of disruption to their lives, down from 70%. That, of course, is from Gallup's latest poll. And oh, wow. But you know what's happening? People are beginning to skip their second dose. Yeah, so the public health experts are asking Americans not to skip the second dose. Side effects coming with the second dose of the Moderna and Pfizer vaccines have increased so-called vaccine hesitancy, according to this Fox 5 New York report. Some people are even hoping to get away with just one shot. But the NIH, the National Institutes of Health, they're warning against stopping at one dose. Dr. Fauci said when you just leave it at one dose, the question is how long does it last? But the question is what's happening at Walgreens? With the 2-dose vaccines, you're supposed to wait 3 weeks. Walgreens is pushing it to 4 weeks. What is that? What do they say about that? It's a lot to talk about, everybody. There's a lot that we just don't know. And I think that's why we on the Santita Jackson Show try to have these uncomfortable conversations in a very comfortable space. Florida is having a really hard time with a nasty water breach. The water is radioactive, everybody. This is in the Tampa area. A reservoir has caused panic along the Gulf Coast, and it was discovered more than a week ago. So when we talk about our what is it? As we talk about our infrastructure, that is part of what we're dealing with, everybody. Nearly half of all new COVID cases in the United States are in just 5 states: New York, Michigan, Florida, Pennsylvania, and New Jersey. Together, they reported 44% of the nation's new COVID-19 cases. That's nearly 200,000 cases, 197,500 cases, according to Johns Hopkins. 62 million doses of Johnson & Johnson's vaccine need to be checked for contamination, everybody, and may need to be thrown out, according to a New York Times report. Wow. According to this report, another 62 million J&J COVID-19 vaccine doses are in jeopardy at the Baltimore factory that ruined nearly 15 million doses of the vaccine, according to this report from the New York Times. In February, workers at the factory, run by Emergent Biosolutions, a biotech firm known for producing anthrax vaccines, unknowingly cross-contaminated 15 million doses of the J&J vaccine, now 62 million doses of the same vaccine that have been made at that factory, have to be checked to ensure that they were not contaminated. Wow. So, what do you think about that, everybody? Call me or text me at 773 WCPT, 773 because many of us don't even have a choice in which vaccine that we're supposed to take. So now in Detroit, they're sending workers door to door to urge residents to get the vaccine. The Detroit City Council approved a $1.2 million contract with the Detroit Employment Solutions Company to hire over 50 people, and they will be going door to door urging people to get vaccines. In the meantime, 246 vaccinated residents in Michigan, where they're having this tremendous surge in COVID-19 cases. Well, they were diagnosed with COVID. We're going to be talking about that in a few minutes because I want to know, how is it that people who've been vaccinated, we're going to just emphasize that point, how is it that they are coming up with COVID? We're going to talk about that. And now in the United Kingdom, over there in Great Britain and the whole United Kingdom, they're pausing the vaccine trials, the Oxford vaccine trials, the AstraZeneca trials on children, while they figure out the link between those that vaccine and blood clots. Everybody, wow. So, whew. Now the test flight. This is something that gave us cause to pause. There's a test flight uh, to block sunlight. Yeah, it was something that Bill Gates was really, really out in front of, and this was being led by scientists at Harvard University. Well, guess what? They said that they were looking for ways to cool the earth by blocking sunlight. And now, because environmentalist scientists, indigenous groups, and many others objected, they're going to, they're not going to do it. Blocking sunlight. Wow. In the meantime, the suspected, well, he's a friend of George Floyd. He was the man who was in the car with George Floyd. He's suspected of being the man who dealt him his drugs, Maurice Hall. Well, it turns out he's in jail now, and he's been trying to resolve his own criminal cases as they're trying to get him to testify in this case. We cannot wait to talk about this because what does that mean? Is he being pressed to be an informant? Is he being pressed? He's trying to avoid a third degree uh, conviction himself. Are they trying to put the whole thing on Maurice Hall? We got to talk about that, everybody. Oh, Reverend Vicki Johnson, pastor of the St. Thomas Lutheran Church in Chicago. You know, we are nursing broken hearts today. St. Clair Booker, have to kind of tuck it in here because if I talk about it too much, I will start to cry on the air. Someone who's like a father to all of us, someone who traveled with Reverend Jackson for more than 40 years and was a faithful, we don't know, none of us can remember not knowing St. Clair Booker. He was about 94. He made his transition, and love him with all of my heart. He even drove me to college, and he was my chauffeur, my chaperone. My senior prom. I saw him in his tuxedo. I said, "Oh, he's my chaperone tonight." Okay. But we love Uncle Saint. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. Miss him already.
Yes, we did. Yes.
I have a lot of laughs, a lot of wonderful memories, and a lot of great lessons. Of course, he was an elder at the Fellowship Missionary Baptist Church, founding member of one of the first staff members at Breadbasket, founding member of Operation Push, the Rainbow, and just a wonderful, wonderful human being. Mm-mm. So give me some good news today. On top of all of that, because he's your son's God, your first child's godfather. He's
My
everybody's goddaddy, right?
yes. Yes.
Man, he just, one day, the day Jesse got married, my brother, former Congressman Jackson got married. We were standing outside at the house, and everybody was, we all flew in that day for him to get married, and then everybody had to go someplace else. And he said, someone asked him, "Do you have any children?" And he said, "Oh no, the Lord didn't bless me with any kids." I looked at him and I said, "Are you serious?" And he said,
He,
"Oh, I
he
think,"
had more children than can be counted.
and frightened more
Yes.
children than than could tell. He was more frightening to you than your own parents. But let me get to
Yeah.
the good news, because the good news is that we knew him, and you've got some great good news for us today, Pastor Vicki Johnson.
Yes. Well, good morning, Santita, and good morning, the friends of the show. This weekend, Christians celebrated the resurrection of Jesus Christ, but there would not have been a resurrection without a crucifixion and burial. Jesus went through it in order to come out. Some people think it wasn't really all that hard. After all, he was the Son of God. And some people, for you, Santita, think the same thing. They think that you have it easy. After all, you are the firstborn child of the Reverend Jesse and Jacqueline Jackson. It wasn't so then, and it isn't so now. In addition to celebrating the resurrection, we commemorated the assassination of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Dr. King lived a nightmare. He fought for the rights of his people while some of his very own people were fighting against him, in addition to the establishment that used billy clubs, dogs, fire hoses, and even jail. It was a nightmare. But while living a nightmare, Dr. King had a dream, and he held on to that dream to the very end. As a matter of fact, some of us are living out the reality of his dream right now, whether we give him credit or not. So, whatever you are living through today, and it might very well be a nightmare, if you can hold on to your dream, if you can just keep the faith, you will make it to the promised land, not over in glory in the great by and by, but you will make it there, here and right now. And to me, that's good news.
Amen. And thank you for bringing Dr. King into this, the man with a dream who was living a nightmare. I can't wait to
Yes.
hear that sermon. Oh, I can't wait to hear you deliver that
Yes.
one, because there it is. There it is. Pastor Vicki
Yes.
Johnson. I
Yes.
just love her so. She's got so many gifts, so many gifts. And I'm so glad that your spoken gift is in this particular ministry. And I'm so glad that you've been able to minister to us and to me through song all of our lives. One of the greatest psalmists you ever want to hear, the great Reverend Vicki Johnson, pastor of the St. Thomas Lutheran Church here in Chicago. I love you, Reverend Johnson.
I love you, Santita.
And
God bless you and have a wonderful show.
absolutely. Thank you. You got things started just right for us. Everybody, I want to hear from you. I want you to call me at 773-763-WCPT, 773-763-9278. GWC Injury Lawyers gives you the opportunity to text. Want to know if you've had your vaccine. Have you had any reactions to them? Did you get the single dose, which is J&J? They're having some trouble manufacturing that. Now they're looking at 62 million doses more. They've got to find out if they've been contaminated. Now we also are finding out, Dr. Deborah Verholten, Associate Dean of Public Health at Michigan State University, that now some people are thinking that even if they have a 2-dose vaccine, they're one and done. And now public health officials are having to come out to convince people to go get the second dose. Walgreens, if you get the second dose, you're supposed to wait 3 weeks. They've been bumping it out to 4 weeks. First of all, if you have a 2-dose vaccine, do you need the second dose? And what about spreading it out by bumping it out by a week? Talk to me.
Hey, good morning. So remember the first day, and I was really mad. I was really mad when even the professionals And we heard this coming from the White House, from the CDC. Remember when they were saying we want to just at least get everybody one dose?
Oh.
And I pushed back real hard on that. And I said, no, no, no. And I said, I did not do this to get partial protection. And they did quickly change that. But what happened was they changed the narrative to match the circumstance. So because we were having these supply problems, they said, well, we think one is better than none. I said, no. I'm a no to that. And that might work for people who haven't had their first dose yet. But I did not get one dose without the agreement that I could get the second dose. And I was able to get that second dose. And remember, my second dose appointment was canceled. So I know, it's just, so this notion now that people can get just one dose, well, here's the problem. If you get just one dose, then you get one dose effectiveness. And the numbers that we all have heard and the numbers that sound so exciting and the numbers that give people hope are not based on one dose. We don't have the one dose numbers for real because we're now battling a different strain of the virus, number one. So if you only get one dose, you're getting something that's less than what we even know from the clinical trials. And it varied per vaccine. One had a higher one dose effectiveness than the other. One was like around 50% and one was around 70, 72%. But remember, that was on the original strain of the virus. We're now mostly contending with the variants. So one dose, unless it's a one dose vaccine, I personally don't think it will do. And I had always been saying that. I'd always been saying we need to administer this thing as designed. Stretching it out a week, that's not a good thing either. But it's not as bad as denying people the second dose or trying to convince people that the second dose is no big whoop. Because, again, if you want what's been advertised, you have to do it the way it's designed, right? And each of these vaccines has a schedule for when that second dose is to be administered. And that is based on good science.
But
that's based on clinical trials testing.
That's science, from basic college chemistry. They would have these two-stage these two-stage experiments that might take you 2 weeks to complete. If you touched the beaker, everybody, you would have to start the experiment all over again because you would have altered the results. When you do a diet, when they tell you it's 4 ounces, they didn't say 4.1. They didn't say 3.5. They didn't say 4.5. You're supposed to do, the directions are there for a reason. And you just made this point about changing to fit the narrative. And I'm wondering what else they're changing to fit the narrative. Because now we're seeing all this spoilage of these vaccines. Are they moving too fast in the manufacturing of these vaccines? Because that's 62 million doses in addition to the 15 million we talked about yesterday. That's a lot of medicine.
Yeah, it is. And then you get a lot of waste. A lot of waste. Waste that we can't afford.
Who pays for
we
that
expect waste.
Who pays for that?
Our tax dollars are paying for all of this.
You have got to be kidding.
All of it.
Wait a minute. Our tax dollars are paying for this, but we cannot sue the companies if we have a vaccine injury. How does that work?
Yeah, my mind is just as blown as yours.
Okay.
It doesn't make good sense, and it's not fair. And if Attorney Hoffler was on, I'm sure she would say, this is not going to be a problem until it actually is a problem. Because when somebody jumps up to sue one of these manufacturers, then that'll be the real test for what recourse do people have. Because we don't know what we don't know. We don't know what we don't know. And as we grow in knowledge and learn more, then people will do what makes sense for them. So I wouldn't believe that we have no right to sue, because the reality of it is if we find out that something egregious was done and it causes somebody death or injury, people gonna sue.
No, but
And
that's
they'll
what
take it all the way to the Supreme Court.
Reagan signed that into law in '86. Because back in the
Yeah.
'80s, up through the '80s, these pharmaceutical companies were being sued. Uh, and so they were losing money. They were going into bankruptcy. So the corporatocracy, went into full effect, and they signed into law.
1 minute.
They wiped out our ability to sue these pharmaceutical giants. Now, what we can do is we can sue our government, which is like what we're suing ourselves to get paid by ourselves. You know what, Dr. Deb, stay right there, because we have a whole lot to talk about with Dr. Marilyn Porter. She's out there in the DMV where you are, D.C., Maryland, Virginia. Well, you're between there and, of course, Michigan. And she is
30.
the head of pediatrics, professor of pediatrics at Howard University Hospital. She's a physician, and she's going to talk to us about something that you talk about every day, our hesitancies, and what to expect from these vaccines and how we can increase our overall healthfulness, because that is the
15.
drum that she has been beating. Of course, Dr. Deborah Verholden, she's been beating this
10.
drum every single day for more than a year on the Santita Jackson Show.
5.
Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show on WCPT 820 in Chicago and AM 950 radio in Minneapolis, St. Paul. Back in just a few minutes. Dr. Deb?
Yes, ma'am.
I've been working, girl. Been working overtime. I've been working, girl. How's my little baby doing since you're about to be grandmama? I can't believe it.
She's doing all right. I know. If you see
girl,
her, she looks like she's 12. She looks 12.
But you know
She's
what?
so tiny.
You are going to be so crazy. I mean, I see it coming. I see it coming. I see it coming. I see it coming, girl. You are going to be the craziest grandmother. I mean, in a great way. And what a blessing to be able to have the time, right? And to be able to see a grandmother who's doing so much in the world. I just don't think you have any idea how much of an inspiration to that baby you're going to be. And I'm so grateful to God for you. I'm thrilled for you. Thrilled. And thrilled for this baby.
Yeah, I'm excited.
I can hear it in your
I think
voice.
about her all the time.
Dr. Porter is with us.
I said, well, my granddaughter, I'm going to be with my granddaughter, my granddad. And they was like, oh, how old is she? And I was like, she's not here yet. She's on the way. Yeah.
Crazy. That's just crazy, crazy, crazy. You're like, oh my goodness, look at what happened. I want to introduce you to Dr. Marilyn Porter. Of course, she's a Howardite, everybody. Come on, pause for the Bisons.
Hello.
Come
Hello, everybody. Good morning. Good morning.
Bison Nation up in here today. But you know what?
That's right.
I was very, very eager for, of course, she's at the Howard University Medical School. We used to study in the Med-Dent Library. That's right.
Oh, yeah.
Back in the day. Because it stayed open all night long, right? But she's done so much great work. And I want you to meet someone who I think would benefit from knowing you, Dr. Porter, with all of your vast experience. This is a young woman. We're so proud of her. She got her PhD. She's an epidemiologist. She went to Johns Hopkins on full scholarship. Came out at 24. Oh, brilliant.
Amen.
Absolutely brilliant. And what she has done, they pulled her from Johns Hopkins to Michigan State to create their School of Public Health. And I said, this will be an interesting coming together to have these two women, these two powerhouses come together. And I'm very, very excited because you have done such brilliant work. You're out there with Dr. Celia Maxwell, who's one of our physicians. And come on. Howard's my spot. When I get sick, I still talk to my people at Howard. But I want to thank you.
Yes.
I want to thank you for being with us because we've got a lot to talk about today. So, Dr. Porter, meet Dr. Deborah Verholden.
Hello. Nice to meet you, Dr. Deborah Verholden.
Hi, good morning. Good morning.
So, I'm very, very excited. And I met her through my very, very dear friend, Charles Ellison. I can depend upon Charles to just get me the slamma jamma guests. And he's the best. He's the best. He's the best.
Yes.
Thank you so much for all that you're doing. So we're going to come
So
right
you
back.
guys, what's your weather like out there?
Warm.
Everything okay in Chicago?
Look, I'm
Okay.
expecting snow, but it's going to be, 74 degrees today. But I don't know
30.
what's going to happen tomorrow because it's a little warm for this time of year in Chicago. This is not D.C. Okay.
Right, absolutely.
No, this is April. No, April.
15.
No, this is a little bit. This a little too nice. I'm a little
10.
wary.
Yeah.
Okay, we're coming up there.
5. This is the Santita Jackson Show.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show, Wednesday, April 7th, 2021, AM 950 Radio, Minneapolis, St. Paul. Of course, we're going to be talking about the Chauvin trial at the top of the hour. And, of course, Chicago's WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station. And so many of you from all over the world who are meeting me over on Facebook on the Santita Jackson and Friends. Yvette Moyo, love you, girl. Love you, love you, love you. And thank you so much for checking in this morning. So many of you on the Santita Jackson and Friends page, Meeting the Morning Stars. And I want you to please go to the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel and please like and subscribe. Thank you so much. Hey, Willie. Hey, Renato, down there in Brazil, sending you much love. All right. I love it. In Sao Paulo. I love it down there. Hannah gave a few concerts down there. Joyce and Makiba and so many of you. We have got who's joining Dr. Deborah Furholden and I today, world-renowned epidemiologist. She's between Johns Hopkins now and the Michigan State School of Public Health, where she is the associate dean. We've got Dr. Marilyn Corder, brilliant doctor. Indeed, my father often says that it's important that people care that you know, but they need to know that you care. Her reputation as a caring, loving physician outshines even her brilliance, which is what is so wonderful. She is professor of pediatrics at the Howard University School of Medicine. She's been a chief of staff at one of the major hospitals in Washington, D.C., and just does so much to give us the best information, to give us the best care, and to really help us through a time in which we really don't quite understand COVID-19. We really don't. So Dr. Deborah Furholden and I welcome you to the show, Dr. Marilyn Corder. How are you today?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. And I do definitely take this seriously. And thank you again. And let's talk and make a difference.
Talk to me. What is COVID-19? I mean, I don't know what it is, and we're trying to figure out this vaccine. What is it, and can it be treated?
Wow. Okay, that's a powerful question. So COVID-19 is a type of a SARS. We used to call it, well, it seems like it's been years, but it's just been, a year and 2 months. But COVID-19 is a novel virus, but is a part of a SARS virus, but it is new to us. And it is an aggressively contagious virus that we know is worldwide infecting, and it takes its toll on our bodies, on our systems. When we first recognized COVID here in the United States, it was already here. Unfortunately, I do remember March the 17th when we shut our office down, but it had already been 2 to 3 months here in the DMV. So it is a highly contagious virus that has caused a pandemic. It has caused over 500,000 lives here just in the United States. And it's still here. One thing I want to emphasize as we talk today, that we are still in the pandemic. People are still dying. I get calls every single day of new cases in my practice alone here in the DMV. Hospitalized grandmothers, hospitalized parents. Often the children are just asymptomatic, but everyone is becoming positive. So I want to make sure as we are COVID fatigued, that we still remain vigilant, that we do not become COVID dumb, because we need to make sure that we protect ourselves and understand. So it is here. We see, wow, so many morbidity and mortality. Now, what I want to do as we talk, I want to make sure that we understand, once you've had COVID and survived, thank God if you survive, you need to understand that COVID is still I call it wreaking havoc in your body, even if you don't know. And the possibilities of that is becoming more apparent. They now have a study that anyone who has had COVID and survived should be seeing a neurologist, should be seeing different special cardiologists, because the effects that COVID has on your body, from your circulatory system, that's why we talk about blood clots, all the way to your neurological system, your joints, etc. You need to be monitored and protected. So that's going to be our second and third morbidity, what we call comorbidities. Well, post COVID infection has now been added to that list.
What about, I mean, because we're seeing that you're right, that people are suffering long-term neurological or mental uh, disorders. People are saying that, my mind is, I just don't have the cognitive abilities. I've got brain fog. I'm hearing a lot of
Right.
that. Then I've seen some other people who've been able to walk through it and they're doing well. Um, is there anything that we could be taking? I mean, Dr. Deborah Verholden
Yes.
and I talk about this all the time. What can we do to boost our immune systems? What should the vaccinated be doing? What should the unvaccinated be doing?
Yes, absolutely. Well, this is where we go back to old school. This is where we go back to our grandmothers, our great grandmothers. That, years ago we talked about our immune system, not just since COVID. We know about our immune system, and there are things and practices that we need to not only take but practice. Hand washing, of course, is wonderful. Keeping your area clean, social distancing. We talk about flu protections with covering your sneeze. Well, we now have the mask, hopefully, that we have face covering, but social distancing, as well as zinc. Now, I don't think zinc has had enough, I should respect, over the years, but hopefully now we're beginning to understand zinc is a major, major boost your immune system, because and it helps your mucocutaneous. Mucocutaneous is the linings everywhere from your nose to your mouth, etc. COVID, that's where it enters. That's the front door where COVID goes through. And that's why people will say, I lost my smell. I lost my taste. I can't, and that's because of the mucocutaneous system. Zinc empowers it. So your zinc lozenges, your zinc tablets, zinc goggle, everything zinc. Then vitamin D. Vitamin D, when I was in medical school, we thought, oh, well, only the elderly, the osteoporosis. Vitamin D is important from newborns on up. We now suggest vitamin D drops once the baby is 2 months old. You're not going to get it from the sun as much as you need it, especially people of color. Now, with the COVID, we know those that were borderline are now vitamin D deficient. And those who were vitamin D deficient, which 80% of people of color are, is severely vitamin D deficient. About 3 months into COVID infection, they did it. Some of the studies were finding that autopsies, the common denominator of those who did not make it and succumb to COVID, were vitamin D deficient. And unfortunately, as I said, people of color, black folks, we tend to be vitamin D deficient. So vitamin D is very important. Vitamin C is very important. That's your immune system increasing as well. So vitamin D, vitamin C, and zinc. I call those the power pack trio. If you can imagine the band leaders, but the trio of what's important for your immune system. And then, of course, eating well, resting, and doing the preventive things. And I want to say this: ibuprofen, Advil, Motrin. I don't want to step on toes. Can weaken your system with COVID. So it invites COVID into your body, including your lungs. And that's why there's many times we'll say folks who have asthma, who have COPD, should not take ibuprofen because it weakens the actual response for the lungs.
I did not know that. But
I know.
I take a leave, so just I'm not advertising for anyone, but I found that
Right,
works,
right,
with me just very, very quickly. On the rare times that I take something. But it's
right.
interesting. I was at my dentist office and I was, getting some dental work done, and she wanted to know if I had had ibuprofen or another aspirin, in the past 24 hours. I said, wow, no one's ever asked me that before. She said, oh, yeah, because you
That,
can't do one You can't do both. You have to do one or the other. So I need to know. And there are just a lot of
Right.
there are a lot of things. How do we get how do we know that we've got? When should we be concerned that we might have contracted COVID?
Well, I call COVID the great masquerader. And the reason I say that, we were led to believe early in this fight is that COVID will, you'll start coughing and may or may not get a fever. But it all depends. You could have fatigue and diarrhea and have COVID. One of the things that we try to emphasize, of course, protecting yourself, but making sure that you're not around individuals who have the uh, symptomatology, multi-symptomatology, or just one symptom. You can have COVID and not know it. So let me back up. That's called asymptomatic. So if you have those symptoms, you can still have COVID if you've been around someone who has COVID, and that's why we want you to, stay your distance and social distance and not be around crowds and the super spreading events. So how would you know? Go back to your question. So let's just say you're feeling different. You're more fatigued. You may have a cough or two. You may have a pain. You may have a GI tract symptoms like diarrhea or tummy ache. It varies. It varies. And most people say, well, do you get tested every time you think anything? Yeah, well, I think we're probably doing, out of every 10 tests, 9 were not necessary, but but it's more preventive to make sure. So it's something that if you feel you're feeling different, then go ahead and get tested for COVID. There are some occupations that demand weekly testing, frontline workers as I am. But even with schools, churchgoers, now they're opening up different churches and places where people gather. So sometimes you can be asymptomatic. So when in doubt, get tested.
What about the vaccines? I mean, we're seeing that in where Dr. Verholden, who's with us, and I want her to jump in here. We're seeing that
Yes.
Uh, that people who've been fully vaccinated, they're coming down with COVID. And I know Dr. Deborah Verholden, she has been a trooper on this show because she is so busy and she is prevailed upon by people all over the world. And I just thank her for sharing this time with us, like you, because it's you're asked the same questions over and over and over again, but it's like people, need to hear it over and over and over again. What about getting fully vaccinated and then you still get COVID? What did they do, not do? Was someone careless? What? I mean, I'm not trying to shame or blame. I'm just trying to figure out what it is that we can do to get through this pandemic.
Mm-hmm. All right, I'll let Dr. Verholden answer first, and then I'll go from there.
Okay.
Well, it's how you treat and respond to COVID is the same whether or not you've been vaccinated or not. The great thing about being vaccinated is if you are vaccinated, your body already has a running start on an immune response. So a lot of people that have contracted COVID that are vaccinated have had a much milder case than their counterparts. Similarly, and I have a somebody who works for me who contracted COVID. It was actually very sad. She got breast cancer right at the outset of this pandemic, and she contracted COVID in the course of her breast cancer treatment. And she recovered, but it was a slow, tough recovery for her with COVID the first time. A lot of people, their second infection will actually be worse than the first infection. And she got vaccinated, and then she contracted COVID again. And the second time, she knew she had COVID. She recognized the symptoms. She went and got tested. It was positive. The second time around, it wasn't nearly as severe as it was the first time. And we're pretty confident that that's in large part due to having the vaccine. So what I always tell people, if you actually end up contracting this virus, you'd rather contract it being vaccinated than unvaccinated. Because a vaccinated person has an immune response that's already primed and ready to fight this thing off. Where somebody who is not vaccinated, and the human body is an amazing thing, but you don't have that added protection. So your body's got to do all the work, right? And it's got to also do all the work to heal and repair itself. Remember, the real money maker with this virus is it prevents people, with the vaccine, is it greatly reduces the likelihood that people will get sick and die from this virus. Because remember, people are surviving and they got what we call long COVID or become long haulers. And they're dealing long term with the different fallout and different symptoms from this virus. And young, healthy people. One of my faculty, he was a runner every day. He's recovered. It took him about a week to recover. And I said, how is it? Because the thing I'm checking in on and what I'm noticing the most is most people describe not having their wind back. Mm-hmm. And he said, it's okay. I can run. I feel just a slight difference, but I'm getting stronger every day. He said, but I'm tired now all the time. I am always tired now. And he didn't have that problem beforehand. Mm-hmm. So the vaccine helps a lot. It's not 100%. I call it the important and imperfect layer of protection. As most things are, like masks. It's all important, but none of it. But it's all important, and all of it has a little bit of flaw to it. It's not. No one thing is going to solve this whole problem for us.
Dr. Corder?
Right. Yes, absolutely. And one of the things with the vaccinations, we came out with two previous ones, the mRNA ones, the Moderna and the Pfizer. And people were, oh my goodness, that's a new one. That's a new one. It's actually not a new procedure. It's not a new technology. It's new relative to vaccinations of this type. But we've been studying messenger RNA. I'm also a geneticist. And one of the things I want to make sure that your listeners know, the messenger RNA is just that it gets the message out there. It's not going to affect your DNA. So some people get those mixed up and say, oh my goodness, it's going to change my DNA. That it is not going to do. And I totally agree with Dr. Verholden. It's what these vaccines do. It's not all the cure-all. You can still get COVID, but the attack on your body that the COVID can cause is so minimized. With the mRNAs, we're talking 95% of protection that it doesn't get you to the point where you're having severe respiratory problems, you're not on a vent, often not even hospitalized. But yes, indeed, you can get COVID after being vaccinated, from the first vaccine to the second dose, etc. Many people will ask, how long is this immunity that these vaccines are giving you? Well, it's like making a plane as we're flying the plane. We don't know yet, but we do know this. Up to 6 months is what they're suggesting. But those memory cells, and what the vaccination does, it gives that extra protection ahead of time. It sets up, it gives you that fortress. It gives you your protective layer. Say, I've been here, I've seen these cells will say, I know what this is coming. It gives you your fire drills before the fire. So it allows your body to be ready all the time. Now, that doesn't mean that a few of those, COVID fighter planes can come over, but it will give you that extra muscled up for your immune system. It is so important for those who are immunocompromised, who are elderly, who have comorbidities, asthma, etc., or who can't even, when they go home or when they are, in their home environment, they can't socially distance because it's too crowded. So there's lots of social economics and social determinants that affect us, especially people of color, when we talk about COVID-19.
What are you seeing on the ground in the DMV?
I think that initially we were not so prepared as, I guess, every place else. But now we have really, be it because, I don't know if it's because it's the capital, but we have really increased our testing. Initially it was difficult to get a test.
Wait,
people were running around trying to get a test.
Would you stop right there? Hallelujah. I'm so glad. I felt like Dr. Deborah was the only, top flight healthcare professional who was saying that. I said Black people could not get a test. But my white friends could go get tested when they got the sniffles. And I'm not mad. I'm like, I'm happy for you. I just want that opportunity on my side of town.
Yes.
Dr. Porter, we couldn't get tested.
Oh my God. You couldn't get tested. And people would go to, I won't mention a lab, and they're like, no, you have to have this, you have to have a referral, you have to this. it was so difficult. So there were barriers, and unfortunately, those barriers did cause lives, and it pushed us back in terms of testing. Now, after a while, after a few months, they were increasing testing centers and making it a little bit, the accessibility improved somewhat. So now it's across the board. You can get tested anywhere, everywhere, fire stations, schools, hospitals, and now we're at the point of who can have the vaccine. So, of course, we heard the White House, it's now available to everyone by the next week or two, but there's still only 20% of folks who are vaccinated, and nationally. And then here, we're a little bit better. We had several areas, several counties that made up of minorities, majority minority, that were behind, very much behind in testing, and unfortunately increased in surging and hospitalizations and deaths. So we're turning slowly. The ship is turning to more positive, more better numbers and less positive testing.
Let me go to. I have some people who want to speak with you. Let me go to Ron from Naperville. Ron, very quickly, your question or comment.
Yeah, I just wanted to reinforce what the doctors. I'm not a doctor. I'm an IT guy, but the vaccines are not a one-shot wonder or a two-shot wonder in many of our cases. They're like a loose ratchet wrench socket. It fits sort of over the receptor or into the receptor as a blocker or other techniques like that. It's at best close. And when you look at all the variants that came after the major body of Pfizer and Moderna work, and some of those were captured in the J&J vaccine, but there's still more coming out. And until we get enough people vaccinated, we're going to have more variants, because those who are not vaccinated are incubators for the new wonderful COVID. So we're going to get COVID shots every year.
But let me ask you this: are the unvaccinated the problem, or because it seems like the variants are they're just out here, or are the unvaccinated the problem?
Well, it's both.
Well, no. Let me ask. I hear you, Ron. Let me ask Dr. Corder and Dr. Verholden before I get another caller in before we go. Dr. Corder.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, and thank you, Ron. It's not the one-shot wonder. You're right, and it just gives us extra prevention. Of course, we know that the emergency use authorization was the only reason we're able to have these vaccines come out due to the emergency of COVID and the pandemic. So there's a lot of things we don't know. And as I said before, even now they're beginning to do a 6-month study for those who have gotten both vaccinations 6 months out, what's going on with their immune system, how they're even responding to the variant, and what else is happening to their body. So I want to make sure that we don't rest assured, I got the vaccine, we don't have to do anything. Yeah, you still need to be very careful and just see this as one extra protection, like a double zinc dose, okay? But definitely we still have to be aware.
Let me bring up Al from Indiana. He has a very important question for you. Al, what's on your mind, sweetie?
Yes, personally, I'm taking, I have had chemotherapy, and I'm presently taking an IV for intravenous for my immune system. What effect, I've had the Pfizer both shots. What effect, if any, does this have on my immune system?
Dr. Porter?
So, yes, exactly. So what happens with chemotherapy, of course, your immune system is somewhat limited or compromised. And what we want to make sure that first of all, I'm glad that you got the vaccine. Now, what the effects of the chemo sometimes can minimize or decrease some of that fight back that the vaccine did. And it depends, and of course that's individualized, as well as it is dependent upon how your chemo is affecting your body. Certainly, whoever your team the team of your doctors, they're doing an excellent job. The fact that you got your vaccination, the fact that you're in a program that's increasing your immune system because of the chemo, you have the best of protection right there. But I still say to you, please, by all means, I'm sure they've already emphasized it. I will re-emphasize it. You know, stay your distance, keep your mask on, and they're very aware of what's happening with your body because they will test you, and hopefully you've been tested several times throughout this course.
Well, you know what, Dr. Marilyn Corder can be heard on WOL in Washington, D.C. When can we hear you? Because she talks about these topics and politics and everything else. How can we hear you?
Yes, every Saturday from 3 to 4 live right here Eastern Time. It's from 3 to 4 and WOL 1450 AM. That's Radio 1 WOL 1450 AM. And thank you for we're talking about that.
Oh, are you kidding me? That's nothing. No. I'm always going to announce that. I'm sorry I didn't do it at the top. But every Saturday from 3 to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and 2 to 3 Central Standard Time, you can go to WOL in Washington, D.C. Just go online, WOL DC. Thank you, Kathy Hughes. And you can hear her, talk to her, and ask her some more of these questions. We need more Dr. Marilyn Quarters. We need more Dr. Deborah Holdings. These are some of the greatest minds in the field, and you have access to them, and we thank God for their service. Coming up, the Chauvin trial. What is going on, everybody? And black gun ownership. Why is it on the rise? Back in just a few minutes. Thank you, Dr. Corder. Thank you, Dr. Deborah Holden. I so wanted you two to meet because
this is fun.
Oh, look, because Deborah is an absolute genius, mad genius, as are you, and but you all have such the spirit to serve because they pulled Deborah out of Johns Hopkins because she wanted, and she's in Flint. I'm talking all about Deborah. She's in yes, she wanted to take all of these stellar credentials to the people who needed them the most. And that she just got my heart when and she gets really fired up all the time. Deborah, you still there?
Yeah, I'm here, but I got to sign off. I got a board meeting at 8 o'clock in 1 minute.
There you go.
All right. I love it.
I'm not mad at her, but I love you, Deb. Dr. Deb. Excuse me.
Love you back. It was so nice to meet you as well. I missed the DMV. I love just appreciate the work you're doing. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And likewise, it's an honor.
Oh, we're going to connect you all. I'm going to connect the two of you because she should know you and you should know her. And I can't. I'm very excited about what this could portend. And just again, how can we hear you, everybody? Because I have everybody on Facebook, and they want to know how they can be in touch with you. Because this is a consultation, everybody.
All right. Yes.
WOL.
Radio 1 WOL 1450 AM, and that's every Saturday 3 to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Okay. You have any final words you want to share with us before you go?
Absolutely. So I am, I'm concerned. We're in year 2, and we're certainly concerned. We're certainly tired and want this to be over. Yes. But we're still seeing an increase in cases. Schools are opening up. Here in my area, we have daycares, we have schools. Some of it's hybrid, some of it's in person. And we want folks to understand just because things are opening up, to still be on guard, not to let your defenses down in terms of how to protect and save lives. People are still dying.
Dr. Marilyn Corder, every Saturday on WOL in Washington, D.C. WOL, Radio 1, everybody, 1450, from 3 to 4 Eastern Standard Time, 2 to 3 Central Standard Time, and that's 12 to 1 Pacific Time. You do not want to miss this show because you're going to get some of the best information, and I've got to have you back, and I'm claiming it in the next few days. You let me know when you're available, Dr. Corder, because I want to get as much practical information out. And then you grab up from Chicago and listeners from all over the country. You grab them up too. How about that? Hey, there are enough listeners for everybody. And I'm not trying to hog. I want more people in this space. Come on, what is that? That's what this is for.
Yes.
Yes.
Knowledge is power.
And knowledge is power. And that is her motto. And I would never bring you on this show and not tell people how they could get in touch with you and how they could hear you on your own show. We're so grateful to Kathy Hughes for her sensitivity to the community and for her giving you this platform. She doesn't have to do it, but I'm so grateful that she does. She's been serving us for so long. We remember Moon Man Bacote. Hello, when I was at Howard. Okay.
Yes.
WOL was off the chain. Yes, it was. Oh man, she was hosting her own radio show then back in the 80s and had her fingers on the pulse of the community. Please give her my love. We love her so much.
Absolutely. I will do that.
And I love you, Dr. Corder. I haven't even met you, but I feel connected to you already.
And I'm going to let our mutual friend Charles Ellison know that this was a wonderful way for me to start my morning. And I look forward to ongoing conversations with your village.
Let me know when you can come on next week. Give me a day. Just you let me know.
I will.
Seriously, because I'm doing that because I'm seeing the infection rates rise. I'm seeing people get vaccinated.
Yes.
We're now seeing that people are going past the second dose. I already got the first hit. That is not enough. And they need to be told every single day because the CDC, they've had a slide rule on what they've been telling us. If you've been vaccinated for Easter, you don't need, if you go to be with other vaccinated people, you don't need a mask. Then that afternoon, they changed the information. It's changing.
That's right. That's right.
We need some trusted messengers who can give us some practical, what did you say, grandmama advice? That's all I'm saying.
Yes. Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
That's
Definitely.
because my mother made us masks when Dr. Fauci was telling us we didn't need them. And no, you couldn't breathe through them. But guess what? That COVID didn't get through it. And this plague passed our home so far. Praise God. And so I'm just grateful.
Amen.
And I want it, if it hasn't passed your home, I want you to survive it. And I want you to thrive through it. That's why Dr. Corder and Dr. Deborah Verholden and others have been here and will be here. And I thank you so much. So you let me know when you can come on next week. And everybody,
I will.
Every Saturday on WOL in Washington, D.C. in the DMV. And you can catch it all over the world. WOL, Washington, D.C. from 3 to 4 Eastern Standard Time. Dr. Corder will be on with you. And you do not want to miss her. Dr. Marilyn Corder. Blessings to you.
Thank you so much. Take care. Have a wonderful day.
You too. God bless you.
Bye-bye. God bless you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. And so I have Attorney Patillo, Mr. McKee, and Attorney Hoffler. She'll be with us. And she's with us now. Hey, how are you all doing?
Good morning. Good morning.
I'm fine.
Okay.
Good morning.
Great. Well, we've got a lot to talk about with this trial, with this man who they're trying to.
1 minute.
He's trying to catch a case. You can't make this
You
stuff
see,
up. Girl, it's like
you need see Robert Patillo. See now, Robert.
Is this the
Robert
cultivation
Dunn,
of
right?
an informant or what? I didn't know the man was in jail right now. It just, you know what? I'm going to get off of it because I'm giving it to you all when we get on the other side of the break. Oh, it's too much. That and gun ownership. Oh, and Alcee Hastings died, girl. Can you believe it? Wow. He survived.
Well, and so in terms of the gun ownership thing,
well, no, that's at the bottom of the hour. Stay right there. No.
Okay.
Oh, no, you're going to get a chance to talk about that. Miss St. John's. Understanding the people walk around.
But let me tell you. But let me just tell you.
15.
When I'm there, I cannot tell you how many young
10.
are there. It's unbelievable.
I just can't believe
And then there's
5.
Yep.
Oh my gosh.
Come in.
Stand by.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. I'm mispronouncing my own name, everybody. Wednesday, April 7th, 2021, WCPT 820 in Chicago, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 radio. Minneapolis, St. Paul. Of course, we're going to be talking about the Chauvin trial in just a couple of minutes. 773-763-WCPT. If you want to text me, GWC Injury Lawyers gives you the opportunity to text you that number. 773-763-WCPT. That is WCPT, which is 9278. Meet the Morning Stars, the Santita Jackson Morning Stars, over on Facebook on the Santita Jackson and Friends page. And please go to the Santita Jackson Show. the new YouTube channel, and everybody like and subscribe. If I get my numbers up, we can do some other things over there. How about that? Got a lot to talk about today, but let's get to a few of these headlines. In Chicago, it's going to be a beautiful day, albeit isolated thunderstorms. 74 degrees will be the high. And in Minneapolis, St. Paul, 67 degrees will be the high, and they will be storming for real up there. The Dow closed down 96 points yesterday. The NASDAQ closed down 7 points, and the S&P 500 closed down 3. Let's get to just a few of these headlines. The U.S. economy is growing at such a rate, at the fastest pace since 1984, it seems that we will be at pre-pandemic size, according to the International Monetary Fund, in short order. The reason, they say, is the $1.9 trillion coronavirus stimulus package. Wow. Nearly half of U.S. adults could have a first COVID-19 dose by the weekend, and the country will have enough vaccines for Americans by the end of the month. At the same time, Americans' worry about catching COVID-19 is dropping to a record low. Only 35% of Americans are worried about catching COVID-19, down from 49%. 77% of the COVID-19, 77% of Americans say that the COVID-19 situation is improving, up from 60%, and 64% report at least a fair amount of disruption to their lives, down from 70%. But the numbers are on the rise, everybody. That is coming from the Gallup poll. Wow, the public health experts are now urging Americans not to skip the second dose of the vaccine. If you have the Pfizer or the Moderna vaccine, that's a 2-dose vaccine, everybody. But now more and more Americans are saying, I got the first dose, I'm done. And Walgreens, it turns out, in between the first dose and the second dose, you're supposed to have a 3-week wait. Now they've been bumping it out to 4 weeks. You're supposed to have a 3-week wait, and you're supposed to get the second dose, everybody. So please keep that in mind. Nearly half of new COVID cases in the United States are in just 5 states, everybody. New York, Michigan, Florida, Pennsylvania, and New Jersey. 44% of the nation's new COVID-19 cases and 62 million doses of the J&J vaccine need to be checked for contamination and may need to be thrown out, according to the New York Times. Now, just a few days ago, we found that roughly 15 million doses were ruined at the Baltimore biotech facility that is producing these vaccines. Well, now we're finding that the same Baltimore factory, the same facility, might have spoiled 62 million batches. Wow. So we will have to see to make sure that they are not contaminated. If they are contaminated, they will have to be thrown out, everybody. So let's get going on this George Floyd killing, on this case. What is going on? What about all of the police officers who were testifying yesterday who were saying that, we saw excessive force, but we did see the defense poke holes in the case. And we saw the gentleman who was in the car with George Floyd when he was arrested, Maurice Hall. He has 4 felony counts. He is in jail right now. And he was saying that, you know what? He is trying to resolve his own criminal cases that are active right now before he will testify, and he wants immunity. He said he fears a 3rd-degree murder charge if he's forced to testify in this case. We've got a tremendous panel to talk about this today, and at the bottom of the hour, we will be joined by Charles Butler as we talk about blacks and gun ownership, which is on the rise. In fact, the fastest-growing group of gun owners in the United States, black women and black men. But let's talk about this case, because I tell you what, Attorney C.K. Hoffler, of course, you host your own show on WAOK in Atlanta, and that's every Tuesday from 11 to 12 Eastern Standard Time, and she's the chair of Rainbow Push and the president of the National Bar Association, more than 65,000 lawyers, one of whom is Benjamin Crump, who is on top of this case. Attorney Robert Patillo, WAOK as well, every Sunday from 1 to 4. He is the Southeastern Regional Director for Rainbow Push and a noted social scientist and one of the founders of Operation Push and the National Action Network, Dwight McKee. Got a lot to talk about today. Attorney C.K. Hoffler, give me the elevator pitch. I felt like I was watching the cultivation of an informant. I said, this guy's in jail. Hoo-hoo. And they want him to testify, and he is trying to negotiate with them, not testifying or getting immunity. What is going on, CK?
we have is not, I wouldn't say the cultivation of an informant per se. What you have is the reinforcement of reasonable doubt. Because remember, the defense has not yet, the defense meaning the team that is representing Derek Chauvin, has not yet put on its case. The prosecution is in their case. So when you're hearing things that may make you feel uneasy, it's because the defense is, as you said, poking holes in the prosecution's case. They're cross-examining, bringing out information in a way that demonstrates what that reinforces their theories of the case. So what George Floyd's friend, who was in the car with him, he's trying to negotiate a deal for himself. But the reasonable doubt is more in the sense of it's making people uneasy. If he's trying to negotiate his own issues, some of which have nothing to do with the case, this is part of the demonization of George Floyd. What is George Floyd hypothetically doing with somebody who's trying to negotiate his own criminal case, who is a drug dealer, who is in his car, who's a friend? That goes more towards the judgment that George Floyd had. Was he now a drug dealer? You know, all of these, that's that reasonable doubt. Just think about it. Drug dealers, which they're establishing this person is, hang out with drug dealers or people in their network. They don't hang out with Mother Teresa or Father John. They hang out with other people who are engaged in nefarious acts. So from my standpoint, they are further reinforcing the reasonable doubt, beginning the process in a very effective way, I think, with this one. Just think about it. The focus is, this man hasn't testified, the focus is on whether this person is going to testify who was in the car. There must be something that the prosecution feels that he has to say, or maybe they want to know what he's going to say before him being used by the defense so that they can get ahead of it. Because I'm sure that there's going to be something a little bit funky in there. Even if he has something to say that would help their case, the very nature of that witness, I think, tarnishes further the image of George Floyd. And remember, that's part of, I believe, what the defense is trying to do to establish reasonable doubt. That there were all these things going on with George Floyd, reinforcing his medical condition. He's hanging with a drug dealer who's probably supplying him, because, you know, in closing, you can argue a lot of stuff. He's probably supplying him with his drugs, Maiden Gate, that maybe even took a hit right before this happened. He's hyped up on drugs, this big gorilla black man, 6'10" black man, you know, in people's minds, he's 6'10", 7'4", and King Kong-esque, unruly man, and this 5'9", 140-pound Derek Chauvin just did the best he could to contain him. And by the way, he's on the bottom of society because he's hanging with, living with, consorting with drug dealers.
And his lovely white girlfriend did not know that part of his life, right? From last week.
She wasn't aware that he was, well, she didn't speak of it. But what I'm saying is, in closing,
I'm just trying to dance with you. I'm just trying to.
Right. That's the dance. And that's the dance. But they might say, and his girlfriend, who confessed that she was an addict and that he was an addict, and that's how they met, an addict session. And we feel, and the defense will say, and please understand, we understand that addiction is a disease. We're not casting aspersions. But his addiction, this is what they would say. I'm just telling you, but they're going to say, but George Floyd's addiction caused him to come into this picture a very sick man, a very agitated man, a very hyped man, a man who was who had questionable judgment, who hung out with questionable people, who did questionable things. And then I think how they're going to spin the knowledge of did Derek Chauvin know him? And Derek Chauvin, yes, he knew him, but he was just doing his job, because when he assessed the situation and looking at him, he could tell that there was something not quite right. By the way, he had to use so much strength to restrain him. You know, that's the kind of case I believe that they're building. And this witness merely goes to to the court of public opinion.
Sure.
But the public opinion in this case is the jurors. That's the jurors. And if you're sitting there listening to all this evidence, you're creating in your mind an image of George Floyd. So the question is going to be, and it can happen, they can do it, whether they will be able to put all of that aside, all his, whatever George Floyd did or didn't do, he didn't deserve to be killed. George Floyd did not have a gun. George Floyd did not have a knife. George Floyd did not have a dangerous instrumentality that warranted the excessive use of force.
Sure.
He did not have that. He was restrained. So in that situation, no matter who he was, he did not deserve to die. But it's going to be up to a jury to put aside all that other stuff. And remember, the defense has not begun its case.
Well,
so we don't even have the full flavor of the defense. But in cross-examination, they're giving us a good idea.
Well,
so that's how I see it.
Robert, attorney Robert Patillo, what did you see?
Well, very similar to what CK said, that as we were discussing yesterday, that the entire conversation would be around what exactly this individual has to say, and why would you put him on the stand if you weren't certain of what his testimony was going to be. I think, particularly for the prosecution, any date you're not making progress going forward in the case is a step backwards. So I think yesterday couldn't be seen as anything except for a step backwards, because even though you're trying to front the information, because of course the defense would have called this individual, they should have had things worked out a little bit better before having this conversation, because as we've said, the prosecution, their goal this week has to be to show intent and to show motive for the officer. Instead, we're talking about George Floyd's past, not Derek Chauvin's past. We still need to find out, as we've been saying throughout, what's going on with all the previous, I think it was 18 claims of excessive force with Derek Chauvin. What do the other officers know about his temperament? What have other people that he's arrested? What can they say about his state of mind? What was his blood test at the time? Was he on any drugs? Does he have any previous psychotic tendencies? But instead, we continue to have, as the media has framed it, the George Floyd trial, because the dead body of George Floyd is what is on trial currently. Now we put the jury into a situation of making a value judgment. Instead of judging whether or not it was the intent of this officer to kill this individual, now the question is, did this individual deserve to die in the eyes of a jury? Was this person's life valuable? Did his life matter? Was he simply just another junkie that society wants to throw away? Was he simply an individual who was headed towards death anyway, and the officer frankly put him out of his misery? Was he a cancer on society and just an albatross around the neck of all of us? That is what the defense wants this trial to be about, and the prosecution has not done a great job of breaking free of that. So until and unless they can quickly pivot, then at best, as we've said, you're looking at a reckless homicide. And I think that will be very disappointing to much of the community. But without that evidence of intent, without that clear motive to why Mr. Chauvin committed this crime, without testimony from some of his fellow officers, without evidence about his past, his mental state on the day of, because I've done murder cases. I guarantee you, if that was the other way around, we'll be bringing all this same information about George Floyd, about his mental state, what he had been through, what his demeanor, what drug deal, if he had a nice night of sleep that night, what he ate for breakfast and all that. But we're not getting that of Chauvin. So until you put him on trial, it's going to be very difficult to procure a conviction on anything higher than a reckless or negligence charge.
Wow. I mean, I just don't understand why we're not hearing about Chauvin, but they haven't put on the full case. Dwight McKee, your thoughts?
Well, understand the defense case. Good morning to everybody. The defense case is that George Floyd died of a drug overdose. And so if this is the drug dealer, then in fact he becomes the reason for George Floyd's death. He becomes the murderer. So it's not just about them trying to defame Floyd's character. It's about transferring the responsibility of who's responsible for the murder from the policeman to the drug dealer, quote unquote, alleged drug dealer. And so he has more at stake than anybody because he will go from being a friend who was driving Floyd that day to the guy who's responsible for George Floyd's death. That's the risk he's running, and that's why he's trying to plead the fifth.
But that's why I was fascinated by the discussion about him. I can hear something in the background, everybody. I don't know if you're trying to watch us at the same time, but make sure you can turn that down. Thank you so much. I'm trying to figure out. I think that he's right, Robert Patillo. I can hear you all. If you're listening to the show in the background, please turn that down. Okay, because we're getting feedback. Robert, I'm getting the sense that, George Floyd is on trial. He's on trial here, and now Mr. Hall is on trial, and he's saying, "Whoa, don't you load me with this case." He is alert as to what I think is going on here. How is that playing? Do you think how do you think that's playing with the jury? How do you think that is playing with the rest of America? There are different Americas that it's playing to.
Well, when it comes to reading the mind of the jury, I'm notoriously bad at that. I think many of us wish there'd be a lot of money for both me and CK to make if we could go around the country reading George's minds and telling you about halfway through the trial who's winning and who's losing. But what I do think is that if you just look at it objectively, and if you take all of your previous biases out, you're supposed to come in with your mind in equipoise, as in there's just a blank slate, almost some tabula rasa. And if you had simply heard nothing but the evidence that's been presented thus far in the trial, could you say 100% without a reasonable doubt that Mr. Chauvin, one, intended to kill George Floyd, and that it was his intent to murder him, that he did so not because of an accident, not because of negligence, not because of recklessness, not because there are any other causes of his death, but that he, in cold blood, coldly and calculated that he wanted to murder this individual. And I don't think the prosecution has made that thus far. And all the defense needs to do is throw up enough spaghetti at the wall and hope that one piece sticks. So if you throw up, he had medical conditions, he was on drugs. The girlfriend says they've just taken some fentanyl. His friend, who's a drug dealer, was in the car with him. Doesn't want to testify. That's kind of shady. Yes, Chauvin used excessive force, but was that excessive force meant to murder the individual? Was his knee on the neck or was his knee on the shoulder? All those things go towards that kind of cloud of information, just this chaff, this shrapnel, which is obscuring what the truth is. And so the prosecution has to work on cutting through that and creating clear and concise narrative that the jury can follow. So thus far, they've gotten a lot of information out. They've established many things, but they haven't put anything out there where you'll just say, "Aha, that's the thing that the jury will take back with them into the deliberation room," and that is what will be the gravamonte of the case. They have not had that moment yet.
Well, CK, I've got a couple of minutes, literally, before we go to the break and start talking about blacks and gun ownership. Why is it on the rise? Why, of course, we haven't heard the whole case. We haven't seen the prosecution's case, but I wish I could see some bend toward the club owner of the club where both Derek Chauvin and George Floyd work. This club owner said that Chauvin, former officer Chauvin, was someone who was aggressive. He seemed like, someone who was not necessarily a nice guy, but everybody liked George Floyd. Do you think we'll hear any of that?
I hope that we'll hear more of that. I hope that we'll hear more about their relationship if one existed at the club. But, everything can be a double-edged sword. In a trial, any trial, you never want to, and you've heard this before, put up a witness whose testimony, who you don't know what he or she is going to say. So it's all a question of taking calculated risks. If the club owner or people in the club, certainly they might testify about the relationship, but they might also testify that George Floyd was high all the time, he was aggressive, he was mean. You don't know what they're going to say. And so it's a calculated risk of whether the evidence that you can get from them is worth the other stuff that might come out. So I don't know, but somehow, and maybe that's what this friend of his in the car was going to establish, drug dealer and all. And the drug dealer part of it, what that would do is if he says something favorable for the prosecution or something favorable for that would support the murder of George Floyd, they're going to impeach his credibility with the fact that he has prior convictions, he's negotiated a plea, all of those things to cast aspersions on his character, but also to challenge his credibility as a witness, because he's a drug dealer, because he's engaged in acts of moral turpitude, because he's killing young people every day when he's selling drugs, because he's the worst person in the world because he's a drug dealer. That's how that testimony is going to play out. So even people at the club who worked at the club,
1 minute,
know what baggage they carry and how their credibility could be impacted. They may have something great to say, but there might be too much other stuff. So the prosecution is making a calculated decision as to who they should bring out for that. And we haven't finished, so there might be some witnesses that will speak to that. We just don't know. But I do think the intent has to come out a little bit more.
Well, I want to know. I mean, this is fascinating. I think we are all getting a lesson in how the American legal system turns. We're also beginning to see how it is that it's very, very difficult to convict a police officer who's guilty of some kind of bad behavior, some kind of malfeasance. It's very, very difficult to do. About half the cases this happens. But first of all, you got to get them to trial. That almost never. So let's talk about blacks and gun ownership. The fastest growing group in the United States of gun owners are black people. Why?
5.
More for the Santita Jackson Show on WCPT 820 in Chicago and AM 950 radio in Minneapolis, St. Paul. Back in just a few minutes. Thank you, lady and gentlemen. Thank you so much. I mean,
you're welcome.
Watching that yesterday was like, I said, oh my goodness. I had to call Dwight and say, what is this? What?
But what I am told. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh no, girl, go on.
I was going to say, I think that in 2 weeks they'll really get into motive. That they need to really work on trying to establish motive, and I still think Fay Ray is the wild card in this.
Who? Oh, his
Fay Ray.
His girlfriend. Is that what you're calling?
Yeah, Fay Ray is a girl, King Cone's girl.
No, I got that. I just saw her on the side of the Empire State Building in the clutches of his brown hands. I just think you're just too much. You're not very nice.
So that's what I think. That was what the police was about, was protecting her from him. So until we really try to focus on the motive, I think they'll be in this first man.
Well, and motive, a lot of times, you don't have direct evidence of motive, because that would require someone to say, look, I'm a racist, I hate black people, I want to kill them. Well, that's not going to happen, because Derek Chauvin is not going to testify. But even if he did testify, he'd never say that. So it's tough to establish motive. And so there are things, there's direct evidence and there's indirect evidence, there's circumstantial evidence that could help to establish that. And the motive is going to be an argument that the prosecution is going to make. They're going to, just as, let me, something that people followed in the OJ trial, for instance. They were trying to establish as his motive, his jealousy, his rage because he was a wife beater. He beat Nicole. And so they were trying to establish that his motive to kill her was just his rage because he was already an abuser. She was moving on. She was with all these other men. And so that was his motive for killing her, for murdering her.
Yeah,
so it's not that anyone is moving on down the street. Right. Well, yeah.
Can they put his wife on, TK Roberts? Can they put his wife on? Because, they got divorced within 5 days.
They did, but I think it's probably going to be, and that depends on Minnesota law. I don't know the answer to whether there's a marital privilege, but there's usually a marital privilege that exists, which would limit, and I don't know if this is the case in Minnesota and the extent of the limitations, but I can find out, that would limit whether a spouse testify. I will.
That came out like a day or two after this video went viral. His wife sued him for divorce, and she said, "I am out." Boom. And I thought that was interesting, but no one's talking about it. It's like all of it. George Floyd is on trial. Do we have? We have Charles Butler, one of my favorite people, my favorite little conservative. Not little. He's a big guy. We were on WVON together, but now big time guy. Well, WVON is big time. One of our iconic Black Talk radio stations. He is on Red State Radio. He has his own show, The Reality Check. And so this is Charles Butler, everybody. Charles, I'm going to bring you onto this panel. How you doing, Charles?
Good morning, gorgeous.
Oh, how he's just a sweet guy, but he really is in love with my mom, everybody. Don't be fooled. I'm not mad
He's
about
wonderful.
that. Everybody's in love with my mom. You just better not tell my father, as old and tired as he is. Make him very upset. I said, isn't this nothing? But thank you so much for being with us. We're going to have a real good talk today. So stand by, everybody. Thank you so much for being with us. I just love you guys. And I love my morning stars. I love all of you. Love you.
5.
Uh-huh.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. AM 950 Radio, Minneapolis, St. Paul. Looking at the Chauvin trial, everybody. Going to be talking about that tomorrow. You know, we give you the latest and the greatest. And, of course, WCPT 820 in Chicago, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, took over the airwaves for Air America. And we're just growing by leaps and bounds every day, thanks to you. Please continue to join my morning stars on the Santita Jackson and Friends page on Facebook. And please like and subscribe my new YouTube channel, the Santita Jackson Show channel. Can't wait to join you over there and begin to bring you some content. We're talking about this really fascinating story that was in just a few weeks ago. That was just in the Chicago Tribune. Faced with rising crime and social upheaval, more Black Chicagoans are seeking firearms. They want firearms for their own protection. And now there is a study that showed this trend is national. According to the Brookings Institution, the fastest growing group in the United States of gun owners, Black Americans, is something you don't really talk about. Why is this? Is it the racial climate? Is it the economic climate? Is it all of the above? What is going on, everybody? Call me or text me at 773-763-WCPT, 773-763-9278. Of course, joining attorney C.K. Hoffler and attorney Robert Patillo and Dwight McKee. Oh boy, one of my favorite people in the world. He's always a fire starter, but here we're going to go. Charles Butler, so many of you know him and love him. The Reality Check radio show on the Red State radio show station, the Red State station, and so that network. So I want you to please check him out. When can we hear you, Charles Butler?
My show is generally live 1 a.m. Central, 1 p.m. Central, 2 p.m. Eastern for an hour.
Oh.
On RedStateTalkRadio.com, and we're picked up on a lot of terrestrial stations.
Absolutely. Well, we need to call it Hot Sauce Radio, because he always brings the fire, but we love him. What is your, I want to start with you, Charles, and I want to go to the whole panel about gun ownership. When we see gun owners in the mass media and mainstream media, it always has a white face. But what we're not seeing is this surge in gun ownership with Black Americans. What gives? What do you think? Some Black people are saying, I'd rather go to trial than to the cemetery. Wow.
Yeah, I'd rather be carried by 6 I'd rather be judged by 6 than carried by. I'd rather be judged by 12 than carried by 6. That's the retort, and we understand that. The facts are, as you were talking about gun ownership, the fastest group of gun buyers are Black women. In fact, when you look at any statistic across the country in any state, the influx and the growing of Black women as gun owners is incredible, and rightfully so, because they need to be protected. And Santita, I don't know if you remember when Devon, that young man, had his brains beat out over his finger. I can't remember his. I
can't remember his name right now. It's on the tip of my tongue. But anyway, I did a story, and what I realized was when the police were sitting there watching this boy get his brains beat out, that the Supreme Court had ruled that the police had no constitutional responsibility to protect you. So that protect and serve that's on the side of the car really means nothing. They can decide not to protect you. But we need to protect ourselves. We need to protect our communities. We need to protect our families because crime happens in seconds. And you're talking about minutes. Even in Beverly Hills, it takes the response time in Beverly Hills is 3 to 4 minutes, which is one of the lowest in the United States. And in our city, when I lived in Hyde Park, it would take 45 minutes for the police to respond. Wow. And I lived right around the corner from where Barack moved. So, and I moved there in '97 with my ex-wife. And it was just appalling to me that it took the police so long to respond. And their retort was, well, we have to call in other cars to come and investigate. So I had to wait for the other guys to get there. I'm like, dude, you're a cop. Whoa.
I mean,
police.
This is one of the wealthiest areas in Chicago, one of the wealthiest areas in the country, in the middle of the heart of the University of Chicago community. Some of the most prominent people in the city, really in the world, live there. Some of the top economists, all of that. That's in 45 minutes in Kenwood? Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
These guys were selling drugs in the back of my garage. And I had just gotten here from San Diego in '97. So I went out and confronted them and told them that they need to turn down the music because I had to get up and go to work. And I said, if I have to come back out here, you won't see me coming. You won't hear me coming. And this one guy said, is that a threat? And I made it very clear to him that it was not a threat. It was a promise.
Wow. Well, Robert Patillo can relate to you because we just saw him on a wonderful television show, and he pulled out, what was it, an AR-15 from the floor and then something else from your pocket? Please explain, Robert Patillo.
Well, to your point, Santita, I think one of the issues that we have with the image of gun ownership in this country is that it is a rural, conservative, white man's issue. That when we think about blacks and gun ownership and black people, the image is always criminality. It's always, the gangbanger or the thug in the alley shooting somebody. That's the image the media puts out. And I think part of that is to stigmatize the concept of black gun ownership. That way they can justify the diminution of black Second Amendment rights. At the end of the day, there's no community in America that needs to be armed more than the black community. We get it from all sides. On the one hand, I used to live right around there. I also used to live right there, 47th and Drexel when I lived in Chicago. And so you have the University of Chicago and all those wonderful things on one side, and then you got, Cottage Grove and everything else on the other side of you. But in Chicago at the time, the gun laws were such where if you were a law-abiding citizen, you had absolutely no ability to protect yourself or defend yourself. You were basically a sitting duck. The people who did not care about those things, who were already in the alternative economy, they knew that they had nothing to worry about when committing a crime, and therefore could commit crimes without any concern that the individuals would be able to defend themselves. On the other hand, we get to see these people storming the Capitol, and they are armed to the teeth. They are wearing tactical gear with zip ties and bulletproof vests and helmets on. So for the average middle-class African-American, I think many people are realizing the last several years that we live in a dangerous world and in a dangerous country. If we're going to be in a country where there are 1.2 guns for every single citizen, we better be one of those people because somebody's got all of those. And the reason we're having an ammo shortage and everything else right now is because people are stockpiling. So whatever they are getting ready for, it's probably a good idea for you to get ready for also. You don't want to, there's the old saying, if you stay ready, you don't got to get ready. So it doesn't mean you're going to be out here, like Yosemite Sam, rooting, tooting, and shooting all the time. But it does mean that just in case anything does happen, you would like to be prepared for that and be able to protect yourself and your family. And from whether it's a bank robber or if it's the Proud Boys or the Oath Keepers or anybody else who may be coming to harm you. So for me, I think it's important for us as a community of legal legal gun owners or people who believe in the right to self-defense in our community to make sure that everybody knows that, look, we will be prepared to protect ourselves and protect our families. So in the TV segment you're talking about, they have me on one of those Trump supporters, your regular debate segment talking about gun laws. And I knew for a fact that this was one of my friends from Michigan that he was at some point we're going to pull out a gun of some kind. So I wanted to make the point that when we're having these gun control debates, often the people who are doing the arguments are coming from a place of not understanding that you can say, well, I want to ban assault rifles. The point that I was making is the big, scary AR-15, actually it was an AR-9 because it was a 9mm, carried the exact same number of rounds in it as the 9mm pistol that I had. The AR-9 that I had a 4.5-inch barrel. The pistol that I had a 4.5-inch barrel also. For all intents and purposes, they're the exact same gun and function exactly the same. But because one is scary, we want to pass legislation because it's been demonized in the press, which will do actually nothing to stop the amount of gun crime that happens in this country.
Can I chime in here for a sec?
Of course.
Go ahead.
Well, first of all, we don't have assault weapons. As a military person, a combat veteran, I can tell you that there are no assault weapons by definition on the streets of America. That's a lie. By definition, the U.S. Army, U.S. Marine Corps, any definition of assault rifle, the AR-15 and the AK-47s that are sold on the street are not assault rifles. First. Second, it doesn't make any difference about the capacity of a magazine because a magazine, with practice, you can drop and change in about 3 seconds. Even the average person can do that in 3 or 4 seconds, so it doesn't make any difference about the capacity of a magazine. I think that the public has been grossly misinformed and continues to be misinformed by the media and by people who want to confiscate guns. When Mr. McDonald, we went to court. Mr. McDonald was the lead plaintiff in the McDonald versus City of Chicago case, where we won concealed carry in Illinois, which was the last state to approve concealed carry. And that was because Mr. McDonald got tired of being confronted by gang members who would walk in his home and threaten him at gunpoint if he called the police on them again, that they would kill him. Now, the city of Chicago was so brazen and so racist. The people there are so racist. They actually went to court and used a Supreme Court ruling called Cruikshank, which disarmed black people in Louisiana and allowed the Ku Klux Klan to run rampant. These white people did this in 2011 when we went to the Supreme Court. They argued Cruikshank. What an affront to black people could that have been? And nobody talks about it.
So, CK.
Absolutely.
Okay. I'm sorry, Robert. Go on.
Oh, sorry. Just to piggyback on that point, this is why I think it's important to have a rational conversations on gun ownership, because when you're having it based off of something which people have no direct experience on, they're not actually going to do anything that's going to regulate or stop the amount of crime out there. The number of crimes that are happening with AR-15s versus a high point or a revolver that's 40 years old or something along those lines is astronomical. So we want to ban the thing that TV tells us is scary versus the things that are actually committing the crimes, and all of which are pretty much negatory, because that's what I said, we already have more than one and a half guns for every citizen in the country. So even if we ban them today, we got enough to last another 100 years.
CK, what do you think? I mean, Charles Butler just said, black women are the ones who are buying the guns. I mean, black men are buying guns, but black women are really feeling the need to purchase guns.
Well, Santita, I am in that demographic, so I am really that black woman who is doing that.
Wow.
I am in that demographic, absolutely. And the reason why, and I can tell you, I grew up being afraid of guns. I have, on my maternal side of my family, we're from rural Buckingham County, which is outside, way in the country outside of Richmond. And so, shooting was not such a foreign thing. I remember my grandfather having those cans, and we would shoot them and all those kinds of things. But growing up, and that was sort of something that was fun once a year when we went to visit him. But I've been afraid of guns because I've been afraid of what people do with guns. But
I have two sons, and at the urging of my children, who said, and I live in a area that is quote unquote safe. The response time is 3 to 4 minutes of law enforcement. I don't know if it's quicker for my house because one time my alarm went off. I had 3 sets of police officers there within 3 minutes when my alarm went off, and I was in the house. And so I don't know what that means other than I know that I am living in the Atlanta metropolitan area, which is a city. And I would venture to say that some of those people who stormed the Capitol came straight out of Georgia. So when you are living in a place, actually it's anywhere, but if you're living here in the Deep South and you know that perhaps your neighbors could espouse views and might have been supporting those efforts to throw over the government and for racist reasons, and you're in a state where there are many people that feel that way, you have to really look at reality. There's nothing that I wouldn't do to protect my family like everyone else. If someone comes into my home and is trying to hurt my children, they got another thing coming, and that's what it is. It is self-preservation. For me, also, I run a social justice organization. It's not that I am the highest profile person, but it is what it is. And secondly, we just have to be careful. We are operating in very difficult times where we have just left an administration that emboldened people to call folks the N-word, to call Black women all kinds of everything, and to act out on that hatred. So quite frankly, when I look at me, myself, and I, even if I do have a man there to protect me, I have to know how to protect myself, protect my children, protect my loved ones, protect my senior citizen parents who are now 80. Back in the day, they might have been able to protect themselves, but at 80 and 81, they cannot protect themselves. So we are living in difficult times, and I can tell you, when I try to do it responsibly. I go to the shooting range on a regular basis, so I know what I'm doing. And when I tell you that the people that I see there are mostly younger and black and brown young people are there. And you do have some people who are like in my age group as well. So it is real. The fears are real.
Dwight McKee?
Well, we've always had a history of carrying guns and going to war, but it's always been to protect white people. And so we've always had, the Buffalo Soldiers and always had the Black Cavalries. And as long as we were willing to go to take these guns and protect white people, we were patriots. The controversy now is that we want to get these same guns and protect ourselves, in many cases from white people. And so who was declared to be patriots on one side are now a criminal element on the other. But a 19-year-old black kid who's in the Marines get a medal and a salute. But a young 19-year-old who's in the Panthers, who's carrying a gun to protect his neighborhood, gets frisked. And so the inconsistency is not in whether we carry guns or not. The inconsistency is why what we are going to be responsible for and who we use them on. And we're going to use them to protect other people, to protect them ourselves. I think that's the dilemma.
Well,
so well, hold on. I want you to finish, and then you, Charles. Dwight?
I applaud Butler and TK and Robert for carrying guns, because I would be probably more be inclined to call them first than the police first. The police is more of a tendency to shoot at you, to shoot for you.
Charles Butler?
Well, I was just going to say, they used to call me the equalizer in my neighborhood in San Diego and in my neighborhood in Hyde Park. They called me the equalizer. And this was when Robert McCall was really Robert McCall. Okay, and Denzel did a good job of doing that too. But anyway, and then they got this woman, whatever her name. But look, let's set the record straight. A 19-year-old Marine doing what Marines do and doing what we do in the military is one thing, because we operate by a different set of laws, a different set of rules of engagement. Military people are not policemen, as the Obama administration tried to make them. We don't go out and enforce the law. We go out and execute missions, which means you go out and you terminate people and neutralize people. Secondly, the Black Panther Party was not frisked because they were black. The laws at the time that the Black Panthers were doing their thing in California, you could actually carry a gun in the open. They changed the laws because these brothers went up into the Capitol with guns, and they were legal for doing that. And we should make note that the Black Panther Party was not a renegade or a criminal operation. They were a community self-help group. And most of these brothers were ex-military veterans. They were very disciplined. They were very organized. And people who talk about Huey and Bobby Steele and Fred Hampton, you talk to Jim Montgomery, a very esteemed black attorney here in Chicago, Ray Glover, they will all tell you how brilliant Fred Hampton was. And the guy, Jeff Ford, who's serving time in prison. These were very intelligent black men. Now, Jeff got into the criminal thing, of course, but these are criminals, and we need to understand that Chicago is I was telling Santita this yesterday. When I got to Chicago and I found out how much respect that people had for people in gangs, I was appalled. I hate gang members. I have no respect for them. They talk about serving in a gang like they were in the military. I was in the Peace Zone Nation for 20 years. Well, you weren't in the United States Army. So, I mean, you're a criminal perpetrating crimes against black people in the black community with the okay of the city of Chicago, Mayor Daley and his horde. But anyway, the insurrection, the lady was talking about the insurrection. It really wasn't an insurrection. An insurrection is an armed attack. The FBI said they found one gun. The U.S. Justice Department said they found one gun. And by the way, these were not Trump people who broke into the Capitol. Trump people, you can go to any rally that Trump has ever done. You don't see people running around with their hats on backwards. Those were all those kids who were perpetrating to be Trump people. And by the way,
yeah, but wait.
This is my last statement.
No.
This is my last. Wait. This is my last statement. My last statement is this.
Trump rallies,
my last
beat
statement.
People up. Come on, Charles.
No, that's not true. And the last statement is this.
The president said.
The last statement. My last statement was this. And you made me forget, Doug. That's why I was trying to get it out about the beating of people. That's not true. That's not true.
No. The president said it. He said
here in Chicago, Trump people were beat going to UIC. Santita.
He said it on camera. I'm not saying that some
said what on camera.
What he said on camera at one of
we
his
had 800,000 people on the. We had 800,000 people on Capitol Hill.
Rally, slow down. That okay, when these people decided to get a little violent, he said, "Okay, that's fine." And if you get arrested, I'll
punch him out.
No,
punch him out.
But that is not the posture that a candidate or a president.
I'm not interested in what's politically correct. My deal is this.
No, wait.
I am more afraid. I know what I was going to say.
Wait a minute.
I'm more afraid.
Let me say this to you, because as someone who comes out of the Dr. King camp, I'm not talking about politically correct. I'm talking about what is morally correct. I'm so tired of political correctness.
I'm not interested in morally correct.
And then we can respectfully disagree.
Okay.
We can respectfully disagree.
Okay.
I just think that if the moral
we can do that, but I don't.
We do, and we're not going to interrupt because that's not what I do here.
Yeah. So what I was going to say though, Santita, was this, and that is that you have to meet force with force. I don't ascribe, as Jim Brown clearly explained, he didn't follow Dr. King. The bottom line is, I think you meet force with force. When somebody hits you, you hit them back, and then we can discuss why you hit me, because black people aren't aggressive. I have never started a fight in my life, but I have ended many of them.
George Floyd didn't get that opportunity. That does not work for us.
Well, we're not talking about that's two entirely different things.
No, it's
two
not.
entirely
When
different
they
things.
bombed Dr.
That's
King's,
police abuse.
One moment.
Police abuse.
One
Dr.
moment.
Has nothing to do
One
with
moment,
Dr.
Charles,
King.
stop. When they bombed Dr. King's house down in Alabama, people showed up at his home with guns. He said, put those guns
That's
down.
Right.
This is a fight we cannot win. We're going to
we can win.
No. We don't. But you know what, Dwight, your response, because I've got about a minute and a half before I got to go. We can talk a little bit more on Facebook Live because I knew this would get a little exciting, a little peppery. Dwight McKee.
Well, the military is a sanctioned game. It's just who's making the decision. That's all they are. I mean, I don't remember them ever remember me lie. You remember me lie, Charles?
I do. I do.
Was the military. Okay, that was the military.
That's right.
That was the military game.
Okay, wait a minute. We can hear something in the background. Okay, slow down.
That's not me.
I don't know what it is, but I think we need to turn that down. Okay, very good. But Dwight, you were making your point. Got about 30 seconds.
Yeah, it's relative to who's making the call, and so I'm saying that now we are willing to defend ourselves.
Yes,
that we are much more scrutinized than when we were just willing to defend other people and their rights and heal in their behalf. And so I applaud this new wave of people who are involved in their own self-protection and protecting the neighborhood and their family.
Everyone, if you
but
want
we're
to hear...
defending ourselves today.
Well, I want to let everyone know how they can hear you, Charles. Tell us how we can hear your radio show.
I'm on RedStateTalkRadio.com live, 1 p.m. Central, and that's
1 minute.
You can pick me up there, Facebook, YouTube.
I just want people to know.
Thank you for having me on.
No. Stay right there because we want to continue this conversation going. We're going to talk for a few minutes on Facebook on the Santita Jackson and Friends page. But RedStateRadio.com.
Red State Talk Radio, yeah.
Red State Talk Radio, because I want to get it right. You got 30 seconds on my show. Go on and tell them how they can hear you, Charles.
You can go to RedStateTalkRadio.com, and that will take you to
30.
My Facebook, my YouTube, and all the other contacts. But we're live every day at 1 o'clock Central.
That's right. And I'm so glad I caught him before he went on the golf course today. But stay right there. I'm going to have some closing thoughts from...
No, I'm on the golf course.
I know.
15.
I love my Charles Butler and Dwight McKee and Attorney Robert Patillo and Attorney C.K. Hoffler and Reverend Vicki Johnson and Dr. Marilyn Porter and Dr. Jennifer Holden. I'm Santita Jackson. Keep a lock on WCPT 820 in Chicago and AM 950 radio in Minneapolis, St. Paul. Stay right here on the Santita Jackson and Friends page. Let's have a little bit more fun. Let's talk about this. God bless you, everybody. Okay, let's have a few more minutes of fun. Is Robert Patillo, my little gunslinger, is he still there too?
I'm still here.
So you guys have at it. So I'm sorry, I was pushing up against the clock. Charles, you still there, sweetie?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so
I'm here. Yeah.
so I mean, and Dwight, you were making the point that you said that the who is it? That the United States military, that they are a gang. You were making that point, Dwight?
Just a sanctioned gang, and it's a legal gang, but it's nevertheless a gang. It's got all the elements of a gang: uniforms, colors, rituals. I mean, it fits every category for a gang. But it's who's making the decisions and whose behalf you're fighting in. The Buffalo Soldiers.
Mm-hmm.
Between the Buffalo Soldiers and just for them is who they were fighting for. What they were fighting about. And so I really do applaud guys like Robert and PK, who, if we would have had guns down in Tulsa, it would have been a different narrative.
What do you say about that, Charles? And Robert?
Well, I first of all, I don't ascribe to. I understand what the gentleman is saying, and that's my 1970s rhetoric. But at the end of the day, as a military person, having served the country, and the first, as you well know, Santita, the first Congressional Medal of Honor winner in Vietnam was a black man named Robert Oliver. We have a memorial dedicated to him here. When we talk about the 9th and 10th Cavalry, outstanding black men who've never gotten credit for what they do. and what they did. In fact, they took San Juan Hill, not Teddy Roosevelt. But that's all another story. But my point today, and I'm going to be very succinct, is that I am not afraid of a white man shooting me or killing me like I was in 1977 in Meridian, Mississippi, when I was the only black naval officer on base. I am afraid of, and when we worked at DON, some baby-faced looking kid, boy like my nephew, pulling up beside me and shooting in my car, who happens to be my skin color. I don't care if he didn't have a daddy, if his mom was on with. None of that makes any difference to me. I'm not trying to change the world. I'm not trying. Do the right thing. I think we've made too many excuses for people who make wrong decisions, and they need to pay the price. As the lady in Atlanta said, she's protecting her family. Well, she ain't protecting her family against the Klan. She's protecting her family against somebody who looks like her, trying to rob her or kill her.
But she didn't say that. Oh, no, you missed her point. She said she was protecting her
family.
No.
But I'm saying the enemy. She said the enemy was the enemy was the white person.
I'm telling you, no, the enemy for her is we are looking at because I know CK, we're in a hostile political climate. Where people, I'm just telling you, wait, because because different people have different narratives, Charles, and different people are saying that I'm getting guns, not just because, the easier conversation, or should I say one of the conversations is, we get applause lines when we attack other black people. But when we decide to get armed to deal with people who are hostile toward our community, that becomes a problem. That was a problem with the Black Panthers, serving food to the community, which they started the meal program in the United States of America, feeding our children lunch, breakfast, and lunch. They started that. But the problem is they said, I am going to defend myself against the police. Now that, that's the problem. So because
he
was
defending the graft.
Yeah.
And let me say this real quickly, if I can get this in.
No, please.
Is that you say they took San Juan Hill? They took San Juan Hill from who for who? San Juan Hill wasn't
make any difference. As a military person, that's not important to me.
All the difference. They was a gang that took somebody else's secret for half of somebody else.
Hey, I was in the gang, brother. I was in the gang. Okay. I loved it. I love my country. I do what I would have done and still will do whatever I can do for my country.
Well, and my father put on a bulletproof vest to run for president, trying to make peace. Trust me, I get it. So I'm just saying we have a different approach to this thing. But I remember my mother's brother, God rest his soul. He went to Vietnam because my mother's stepfather, veteran, Navy, loved it. And they had a sharp disagreement, and it altered their relationship because that's what happened at that time. It was, my mother didn't hate her brother, didn't dislike him. They just had a political disagreement. Coming from a military background, he felt that my mother was that she and my father, this is 50 years ago, they're way out of pocket. And so to me, whom we fight in these wars, what we fight these wars for, that means a whole lot to me, because the morality of it is a problem for me. The fact is, we will launch a war on the Japanese, but we're not going to really drop bombs on the Germans, who were genociding people. We're not going to deal with South Africa. We're going to leave them alone. We're going to let them murder and genocide Black Africans. We're going to let them do that. No, that's a problem for me. Colonialism, Charles, is a problem for me. Imperialism.
Well, I'm not going to buy into your premise. First of all, when you talk about Japan, that's a whole nother story. When we talk about South Africa, that's another story. I had a great awakening.
Well, what story is that?
Let's talk about Japan. First of all, the Japanese wouldn't surrender, and we were going to lose hundreds of thousands of people invading Japan. That was a fact. The bomb stopped that. The second thing when we talk about South Africa, I agree with you. I agree with you on South Africa. It's not important to me. See, those things aren't important to me. The thing that we talk about South Africa, the United States was on the wrong side of that issue. And the reason they were on the wrong side of that issue because they needed titanium. They needed titanium to make the new generation of airplanes, the F-16 and the F-14. And Henry Kissinger, I remember I was at ROTC, and I remember thinking this is really jacked up. I'm over here defending these people.
That's what it always is. That's how we're seeing.
But hold it.
Africa recolonized right now.
But the guy who stepped up, Santita, like I was saying, the protest never stopped anything. The guy who stepped up and stopped South Africa and freed Mandela was Castro. And Castro was fighting the South Africans in Botswana and Angola. The reason I know is because I had friends who were over there observing.
It was a multi-pronged.
No, that was it.
No.
That was it. All the divestment, all the protests didn't mean anything.
Honey, you can shout as
loud. Mean anything.
You can shout as loud as you want. The fact is, Mandela was considered to be. No, don't laugh. Now let's have a respectful conversation. Mandela was considered to be an enemy of state, a terrorist when he was the president of South Africa. The fact is, it took a multi-pronged fight. I can never, ever forget what Randall Robinson... No, you and I respectfully disagree, but I'm going to make my point. You're not going to interrupt me.
Go ahead.
Now, Randall Robinson and Trans-Africa, they did an intellectual fight on the ground. And then Reverend Jackson ran for president and made it... And no, it did no. Making it a state issue, putting it in the Democrats' face, putting it and making it a part of the national conversation. Let me finish. In 1984 and 1988 did make a big difference. And made a difference.
It did not.
No.
Mandela said himself.
No, Robert. Wait, excuse me. Hold on. Charles, stop. Because having traveled around the world at that time and
I have too. And Mandela said himself.
And just hush, Charles. Now Charles, this is my show. The way I conduct things, we don't overtalk, and you're not going to overtalk me, and I'm not going to overtalk you. Stop it.
Okay, go ahead.
What I'm saying to you, because Mandela was someone who I met more than once.
Mm-hmm.
And we knew his wife, Winnie, very well, and knew Gracia Michelle, Samora Michelle's wife, who he married. That was his second wife. Got all of that. And they all agreed, and they thanked us for the multi-pronged fight, because in the 70s, when Reverend went to South Africa, number one, he had to fight to get in there. It took him years to get in, and they would not guarantee his safety. Carter had to say, hey, wait a minute. If you do not guarantee his safety, we're going to have a problem. They wanted him to come in as an honorary white person. He said, absolutely not. I'm not going to do that. So it was getting into South Africa.
So anyway,
no.
When Mandela got free, the first person he went to visit, was Castro. He didn't come to America.
Put him down. Now, one thing I don't do on this show, now you're not going to do this with me. We're not going to do this. Shouting over me, all of this aggressiveness, we're not going to do that. I'm going to make my point. You're going to make your point, or we're going to end this. I love you. But the way that the way that I do things, and I can only give you the conversations that I had with the man himself in my parents' house. I can only give you what I know from Mrs. Mandela. I can only talk to you about what happened with the ANC, who used to stay in our home when they were outlaws. So I'm not giving you some U.S. military perspective. No, I'm talking about it took No, wait. Now, we're going to have another way of engaging on this show with me.
Stop. Think about it, Santita.
No, stop. Let me make my point.
Now,
one of the things that we're not going to do, I don't believe in vulgar conversations, rugged conversations. I believe in robust engagement, but it's got to be respectful. If it's not respectful, it will end. At least on my show. On your show, you can do it any way you want to. But shouting over, no, we're not going to do that. So I'm giving you my lived experiences and things that Dwight saw. Dwight can speak for himself. Things that Robert saw as a young person working for Reverend Jackson. We saw what happened, and we know that it was a multi-pronged fight, because even Mandela, who was not nonviolent, he said, you know what? He changed in prison. He said, I'm so glad that I was arrested and that I was prevented from having that bomb go off, because I didn't want to kill anyone. That's not where I wanted to go. So there's a whole lot to this, and they thanked us for getting arrested at the South African embassy. They thanked us for marching, and they thanked Castro, because we were all working together, Charles. We were on Castro's side, okay? and Castro was on our side. We were on the same side, and he was sending people over to Angola. He was sending them through all throughout Africa, doctors and military people. Absolutely, but it took all of that. It took us saying, you know what? If you decide to continue to do business with South Africa, we will shut you down economically. Economically, South Africa had no place else to go. That is why they had to release Mandela. That is why.
Not true. It's not true, Santita.
I'm just telling you. My parents were sitting with Margaret Thatcher in London.
That's not true.
The weekend before the several days before he was released. And this is
so when you talk to the white people,
no. The white people I've gone from the ANC to Margaret Thatcher, honey. We've talked to everybody because we've been in the throes of the struggle. Were you arrested one time trying to help the South Africans get free? I think not.
Of course not.
Okay.
But this is the point I'm trying to make. Mandela said himself. See, Castro lost 58,000 people fighting the South Africans. And fighting the South Africans. And Botha, who was, and all this stuff about the disinvestment and economic, all that's bogus. The chairman of IBM, who's my friend's dad, said we've been out of, this is in 1981. I'm talking to Jack Keeler. His name, you look him up, Kueatr. He said we've been out of South Africa. We don't care about the protests. We don't care about.
We're not talking about IBM.
It doesn't mean anything. That's all media.
Charles, everybody else was in South Africa because we were there, and we're not just talking. We're not, Reverend. Because they were forced out, and we're not just talking about South Africa.
Care.
No, we were not just talking about South Africa. We're talking about Reverend didn't talk about the chairman. He was talking to the chairman, Charles. Okay.
The chairman? Who are you talking about? The chairman?
Right. All of these chairs and CEOs, everybody all over the world knows Reverend Jackson.
Nobody
Dwight
really
McKee,
cared.
why don't you jump in? No, that is not true. That is not true.
They were out of it.
No. Well, first of all, you were never into it. So what are you talking about?
Well, I was into it. I'm sitting with a guy who was the vice chair of IBM.
You did not fight one moment for these people to be free. You didn't fight. You didn't lift a finger to fight for them to be free.
Because it doesn't mean protest as Du Bois.
Really? Okay. Dwight, why don't you say something?
On it. No, let me hear from Patillo. Robert, you still there?
Okay, because I only have I literally have like 90 seconds before I have to let studio go.
Yeah, Robert.
Yeah, all thing I'll say is there's a lot said wrong. But we can take that up another day. But I do think it's important for people to be, one, understand that the need to protect yourself, understand their Second Amendment rights, be familiar with laws before simply running out there thinking you're going to play Wild Wild West. Understand when you can carry, what the licensing requirements are in your particular state, and make sure that you train with your firearms. Don't just get it and keep it in a drawer. You need to be out there every weekend, becoming proficient with it, and being able to defend yourself and your family.
Absolutely. And you know what? Another time we will talk about this, but it's always joy. It's always a joy being able to engage with you, Charles. And next time I know that you will behave when you are on the
I'm going to definitely behave with you because you just spanked me.
No, it's my show and this is my platform and this is how we do it on the Santita Jackson Show. And so I'm glad that you learned that lesson. But I love you, Charles.
I did.
And
love you.
Dwight McKee, I love you very much. Go out there and enjoy your golf game. And Dwight McKee and Robert Patillo and C.K. Hoffler, who's already had to go, Reverend Vicki Johnson and Dr. Deborah Verholden and Dr. Marilyn Corda, first time with us today. I want to thank all of you, Paul. Thank you for a great show. Everybody, I love you, love you, love you, love you, love you. And I'm so glad L. Stanley Davis is still getting his birthday wishes. I love it, love it, love it, love it. Chaparral, sit down and be quiet. Love you, Daphne, Lorraine. Lorraine, I'm going to call you shortly. Shayna and everybody, because I want to talk to you about some exercises for your mom. She's got Parkinson's, and you know what? I use a lot of my concert training as a musician. I'm using that with my father when he'll let me. Yesterday, he was with Kamala Harris because she was in Chicago, so he missed his lesson with me. How about that? I love you, everybody. I'll see you tomorrow. I was like, I told you I'm doing vocal therapy with my father because I got to help him save his voice. Got to help him do that. So, but love you, Charles.
A great voice over the years.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Even as we disagree, we are friends, everybody. And so Charles is and he will come back to the show because I will ask him.
Yes, you.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
Yeah.
right. I love you, Charles. I love you, everybody. I'll see
Love
you
you too,
tomorrow.
baby. All
Thank
right,
you,
bye.
sweetie. Have a
Bye-bye.
good one, okay?
Bye.
On the
Bye.
Santita Jackson Show. I'll see you all tomorrow, everybody. Love you, love you, love you. Bye-bye.